Have you ever opened a door you weren't ready for and instantly wished you never had? The attic smelled like sun-baked wood and memories. I hadn't been up there in months. But that June afternoon, something felt off. The kind of quiet that isn't peaceful, it's suspicious. I still hear the creak of the last stair under my heel, and the way my breath caught when I saw the door. It was open. I should have turned around. I should have called someone, but all I did was stare at the busted brass lock dangling from the knob like a broken promise. Before I take you into what I found, into what my own brother did, let me take a breath, because this story isn't just about art or money. It's about family, betrayal, and what's worth saving when everything else falls apart. If you've ever lost something you thought was safe, stay with me, because this journey, it goes from secrets in the shadows to the blinding lights of justice. My name is Emily Harper. I'm 32 years old. I restore antique paintings for a gallery in the French Quarter of New Orleans. I live just a few blocks from my childhood home, a creaky old house with green shutters, iron balconies, and more stories in its walls than I'll ever be able to tell. I grew up in that house with my brother, Nathan, and my mother, Claire, an art teacher who painted like she was trying to preserve time itself. This all started just weeks ago. It was the kind of June day that made the air feel syrupy. I'd just finished restoring a 19th century landscape at the gallery, and all I wanted was a cold drink and maybe a minute with the past, our attic, where my mother had kept her private collection of original pieces, things she'd never sold, paintings she made for herself and for me. The attic stairs groaned like they didn't want to hold me. The heat wrapped around my chest, thick and humming. When I reached the top landing, I saw it, the door to the art room, swung half open. The lock was snapped clean through. My sandals made soft thuds against the dusty wooden floor as I stepped inside and froze. The right wall, the one that had held my mother's Seasons series, was empty. Only 4 rectangular outlines remained, slightly cleaner than the surrounding wood-paneled wall, like the past had been erased, frame by frame. No sound, no wind, just the tick of the small attic clock. My knees nearly gave out. I reached for the edge of a canvas still hanging, one of the lesser-known pieces, as if touching it would make the missing ones come back. They were gone. I crouched slowly. My fingers brushed over paint flecks, a thin trail of dust disturbed near the shelves. Then I saw it, a crumpled slip of paper half hidden beneath a loose floorboard. I tugged it free. It was a receipt. From Crescent House Auctions. Date, June 2nd. Buyer, confidential. Seller, Nathan Harper. Estimated value, $200,000. My chest clenched. I looked at the signature. Nathan's scrawled name in that arrogant, rushed style he'd always had since high school. It was like the floor tilted under me. He'd sold them. My brother, my flesh and blood. He'd broken into our mother's attic, after everything she made me promise, and sold her life's work like it meant nothing. I sank onto the old velvet chaise in the corner. My fingers trembled. I couldn't stop blinking. It felt like if I blinked too long, I'd wake up from it, from this weird, dizzying dream. But I didn't. That receipt was real. The wall was bare. And Nathan, my own brother. I could still hear Mom's voice from 2 years ago, weak but firm, as I held her hand in hospice. Emmy, don't let those paintings leave the house. They're part of who you are. Nathan doesn't understand them, but you do. I'd nodded, sworn I'd protect them, and I meant it. I looked around the attic like maybe something would speak. The cracked skylight leaked hot light across the faded rug, and the air smelled like dust and old turpentine. The scent of home, but now it felt rotten, violated. He didn't even tell me. No warning, no call, just a theft, wrapped in legal paper and disguised as a business transaction. I tried to stand. My legs were unsteady. The receipt fluttered in my hand. I folded it slowly like it was something dangerous. My mind was spinning with a dozen questions. Where was the rest of the collection? Who had bought it? Could I get it back? And above all, why would he do this? My phone was already in my hand before I realized it. My thumb hovered over Nathan's name, but I didn't call, not yet. I stood there, in the hollow attic, surrounded by ghosts of color and canvases. My mother's world had been ripped from the walls, And somewhere out there, Nathan was pretending none of it mattered. I bit down on my lip until I tasted blood. Then I whispered, "How could he do this?" And I walked down the stairs. I didn't slam the attic door. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But my heart was louder than all of that. And I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. Not even close. I didn't sleep that night. The ceiling fan in my bedroom spun slowly, squeaking at the same corner every 7 seconds. I lay in bed staring at it, counting each click like a metronome. My phone sat on the nightstand, glowing softly, Nathan's name still pulled up. I hadn't pressed call. I couldn't. What do you say when your own brother robs you? The attic was 3 floors above, but it felt like it was pressing down on my chest. I kept picturing the empty wall, the sharp shape of the missing frames, the echo of Mom's voice in my mind. I'd made her a promise, and he'd shattered it like it meant nothing. By dawn, the city outside was already heating up. I threw on a loose tee and jeans, grabbed a lukewarm coffee, and sat on the porch swing, legs curled under me like I was bracing for a storm. Cicadas buzzed like static. The wrought iron creaked under my weight. I kept trying to remember the last time I saw Nathan, really saw him, not just in passing or at one of those stiff holiday dinners where he arrived late and left early. We'd once been close, before Mom got sick, before the art. I closed my eyes, and like muscle memory, the attic came back again, not empty, not violated, but whole. Nathan was 10. I was 4. Mom had rolled out butcher paper across the attic floor and gave us both paintbrushes almost as big as our arms. Sunlight spilled through the skylight back then, making dust sparkle like snowflakes. I dipped my brush in turquoise and made wild swoops. Nathan, bored, had flicked paint at the beams like a boy throwing pebbles at a pond. "Look, Emmy," Mom had said gently, crouching beside me. "You see how the color bends around your lines? That's instinct. You have the eye." Nathan had been sitting just feet away. I remembered his shoulders going stiff, his brush clattering to the floor. He didn't say anything, but he didn't paint again. Back then, I didn't understand what it meant to be chosen. But now I did. And maybe that's where the fracture started. I took a deep breath, dialed Nathan's number, and held the phone to my ear. 3 rings. Then his voice, not his usual cool, detached tone, but sharp, defensive. "What do you want, Emily?" He said my name like it tasted sour in his mouth. I swallowed. "You sold Mom's paintings." Silence. Then a dry chuckle. "Took you long enough to notice. You broke into the attic. I used a key." He paused. "It was mine, too, last I checked." I blinked. "That's not what Mom wanted. She made it clear—" "Oh, spare me the martyr act," he snapped. "She always gave you the spotlight. The gifted one. The artist's daughter. I was just the kid who didn't get it." "That doesn't give you the right to steal from her," I hissed. "I didn't steal anything. I reclaimed what was mine." His voice dropped to a cold murmur. "You never even asked how I felt when she left it all to you, like I didn't matter." My hand tightened around the phone. "You mattered, Nathan, but this isn't how you show it." A pause, breathing, then the low buzz of something shifting. "I'm warning you," he said darkly. "Back off, or you'll regret it." He hung up. I stared at the screen, stunned. My hand was trembling again. It wasn't just resentment. It was fury, old and deep and festering. I pressed the phone to my chest and just sat there, feeling my pulse throb against it. Somewhere across town, he was living with the satisfaction of having taken what didn't belong to him, and now threatening me for daring to call him out. I stood, pushing the porch swing so hard it groaned. My breath was short. My thoughts were everywhere. I walked back inside, barefoot, the wooden floor cool against my skin. I paced the hallway, up and down, like something caged. The morning light through the stained glass at the end of the corridor bathed everything in fractured reds and blues, like judgment, like fire. How did we get here? Nathan wasn't always like this. He used to make me laugh until I cried. He taught me how to ride a bike, kissed my scraped knees, gave me my first set of oil pastels when I turned 12. But over the years, that warmth had curdled into distance, pride into disdain. I reached the bottom of the staircase and leaned against the banister. Then I cried. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, as the tears spilled over. My shoulders folded inward, my arms wrapped around myself. I felt small, grieving not just the betrayal but the brother I'd lost long before I realized it. But through that grief, something else stirred, like a coal beneath ashes. Resolve. I wiped my cheeks with the back of my hand and walked into the dining room. The table still had the lace runner Mom had crocheted in her last summer. On it sat a dusty binder, our family records. I'd forgotten about it. I placed my hand on the cover and whispered, "I won't let him win." The ceiling fan above spun in lazy circles, creaking rhythmically like it was echoing me. This wasn't just about money. This was about Mom, about her voice, her love, her trust in me. I wasn't going to let him bury it beneath resentment and greed. I wasn't ready yet, but I would be. Somewhere in this house, maybe there was still something she left behind. Something that could help me make things right. Because deep down, I felt it. This was only the beginning. The air in the dining room had shifted. It was still and heavy, like something was waiting. Outside, the sky had gone slate gray. A summer storm was brewing over New Orleans. I could smell it in the wind, hear it in the low growl of distant thunder. Inside, the light dimmed just enough to turn the corners of the house into soft shadows. I stood in front of the old mahogany hutch Mom used to call her command center, stacked with half-filled notebooks, yellowing sketch pads, receipts tucked into books, and fading envelopes. Somewhere in there, I told myself, something had to exist, something more than just memories and paper. I ran my fingers over the spines of books, feeling the cracked leather, the softness of worn covers. The scent of graphite and pressed flowers lingered. Mom used to stash everything sentimental, love letters, old postcards, even lost earrings, in strange places. Once I found my kindergarten report card inside a cookbook. My heart beat a little faster. I slid open the bottom drawer of the desk. Loose papers scattered, one of her old linen handkerchiefs still folded, a Polaroid of me and Nathan from when we were kids, standing in the backyard with finger paint all over our clothes. I hesitated, tucked it aside. Then my fingertips brushed against something sharp. A seam? No. A groove. I leaned in. It was faint, but real. A thin line in the back panel, the kind of thing you wouldn't notice unless you were looking for it. I dug my nails into the edges and felt a slight give. The backboard popped forward with a soft creak, revealing a narrow cavity. Dust motes swirled in the light from the window behind me. Inside, an envelope, yellowed at the corners, tied with a faded blue ribbon. My breath caught. I lifted it gently, as if it might disintegrate. On the front, in her slanted, delicate handwriting, "To Emily, when you need me." My vision blurred. I clutched the envelope to my chest, pressing it against the hollow ache I'd carried since she died. My legs gave out and I slid to the floor, the wood cool beneath me. For a moment I couldn't open it. My fingers trembled. I didn't want it to be over. The mystery, the connection, the hope of hearing from her one last time. But I had to. I untied the ribbon and carefully unfolded the single sheet inside. Her scent clung to it faintly. Lavender and turpentine. The first line hit like a wave. "Emily, my dear, this collection is yours." Tears welled instantly. "I know your heart, your eye. You understand what this art means. Nathan, he has never seen it the way we do. He's angry, and I fear what he might do when I'm gone." I swallowed hard, the words swimming on the page. "You must protect it. Not just because it's worth something, though it is, but because it carries our story. My soul is in those paintings, and yours too." A sob caught in my throat. "One of them, the blue heron, is a lost piece. You'll know it when you see it. They say it was never completed, but that's the lie. It's hidden in plain sight, and it's the most valuable of them all." I pressed the page to my lips, as if somehow she could feel that I'd read it, that I'd heard her. My mother knew. She knew. Not just what Nathan was capable of, but that I'd need this moment, this letter, this truth. I sat in silence for a while. The rain had started tapping softly against the windows. My breathing matched its rhythm. My hand still held the paper like it was something holy. Then slowly I stood. My tears had dried, but something new filled their place. Fire. She hadn't just left me memories. She'd left me a mission. I stared out the window, watching the street shimmer under the light rain. People passed by with umbrellas and shopping bags, completely unaware that, inside this house, a war was unfolding over canvas and color and family and legacy. I returned the letter to its envelope, smoothed it flat, and placed it gently in the drawer beneath a stack of Mom's sketchbooks, not to hide it, but to keep it safe. It felt like the first stone laid on a path I hadn't seen until now. I reached for my phone again. Not to call Nathan, I wasn't ready for that, but someone had to help me figure out what I had, what he'd taken. Because if Mom was right, and I had no doubt she was, then somewhere in that missing collection was a masterpiece the world had forgotten. A masterpiece I was going to find and bring back to the light. Just then, the wind pushed through the cracks of the front windows, making the curtains billow. A framed photo on the fireplace mantel fell over with a thud. I walked to it and turned it upright. It was the three of us, Mom, Nathan, and me, taken right before her diagnosis, her arms around us, smiling. I traced her outline with my thumb, then whispered, "Mom, I'm listening now." And just like that, I knew where I had to go next. If she left a clue, someone else might have seen it. Someone who knew her work, knew the pieces, someone who could help me find the blue heron. And maybe, just maybe, help me take back what was stolen, because Nathan had made his move. Now it was my turn. By the time the rain stopped, the city had changed. The streets steamed under the weight of heat and thunderclouds clearing. Light filtered through in golden strips, making puddles shimmer like oil paintings. I stood at the edge of Jackson Square, gripping my mother's letter in my bag, feeling the pulse of the French Quarter all around me, clinking glass from the cafes, a saxophone echoing somewhere down Chartres Street, tourists chatting under wrought iron balconies. But I wasn't here for nostalgia, I was here for Lila Moreau. Mom had always trusted her, an art expert, curator, and sometimes miracle worker at one of the most respected galleries on Royal Street. Lila wasn't just sharp, she had eyes that could read a century of paint layers in a glance. The bell above the door chimed as I stepped into the gallery. The air was cool, dry, laced with the scent of polished wood, canvas varnish, and something floral, lilies maybe. My sandals echoed softly on the checkered tile. She stood at the far end of the room, adjusting the spotlight on a small abstract piece. Still tall and commanding at 45, with silver streaks through her chestnut hair and a silk scarf tied loosely at her neck. Lila turned when she heard me, her expression unreadable for a beat. Then her eyes softened. "Emily Harper," she said, stepping toward me, arms open. "It's been too long." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. I wish it were under better circumstances. She guided me into her office, a cozy room with high windows, a cluttered desk, and paintings leaning casually against the walls. I sat, the envelope heavy in my lap. "I need your help," I said quietly. Her brow furrowed. I slid the receipt onto the desk, the one with Nathan's name and the auction stamp. Then I handed her the letter. She read it in complete silence. The only sound was the ticking of the antique clock behind her. I watched her eyes move across the page, watched her shoulders stiffen at my mother's handwriting. When she finished, she let out a slow breath and looked up at me. "Your mother was no fool," she murmured. "She knew what she had." My chest tightened. "Then it's real? About the blue heron?" Lila leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled. "That painting was rumored to exist, but no one's seen it. Not publicly, anyway. If it's what I think it is, you're sitting on a sleeping giant." My fingers curled into the fabric of my skirt. "She said it was hidden in plain sight, that it was part of the collection Nathan sold." Lila stood and crossed to a filing cabinet. "I need visual references," she said over her shoulder, "and I know exactly who can help." She returned with a stack of prints and a name. "Jake Ramsey," she said. "He's a photographer who used to catalog Claire's work years ago for a local archive project. He might have the original photos of the attic collection, before anything was moved." I nodded. "Do you trust him?" She smiled faintly. "He once noticed a forgery from across the room using just a reflection in glass. I trust his eye." Within an hour, Jake was in the gallery, early 30s, Messy blonde curls, sleeves rolled to the elbows. He carried a camera slung low over his shoulder like it was part of his body. His presence was relaxed, but his eyes were sharp, the kind of gaze that noticed things most people missed. Lila introduced us, and I shook his hand. "You're Claire Harper's daughter," he said. "I remember your mom. She had a way of speaking with her hands." That nearly broke me again. He spread a handful of old photos across the table, shots of the attic, the collection in full, the walls still adorned, the canvases perfectly aligned. There it was, the missing series. But one caught my breath, a tall vertical piece in the far corner, mostly in shades of muted blue and green. It looked unfinished at a glance, but something about the stroke work, the hidden layers, the bird shape in the center, regal, poised mid-step, made my spine tingle. Jake saw my face and tapped the image. "That one?" he asked. I nodded slowly. "That's it. That's the one she mentioned." He leaned closer, squinting. "That's no student sketch. That's serious. It has the signature hallmarks of an Audubon-era tribute, maybe even a lost study. If it's real, it could be worth more than the entire collection Nathan sold," Lila finished, her voice hushed. My breath caught. For a moment, the room felt like it had shrunk. "Then we need to prove it," I said. "We need to find it." Jake nodded, already taking photos of the old prints for reference. "We can try matching it against known archives. If it's listed under a fake name or misattributed, we'll find the trail." Lila reached out, touched my hand gently. "We're with you now, Emily." Something shifted inside me. For the first time since I stepped into that gutted attic, I didn't feel alone. I had a team, allies who saw the value not just in the art, but in the truth. I exhaled slowly, standing tall. "Then let's prove its worth." Outside, the sun broke through the last of the clouds. And somewhere, I swear I could hear my mother's voice in the light. The next morning felt different. Maybe it was the way the sun filtered through the Spanish moss, or the way the breeze rolled down Royal Street, carrying the scent of chicory coffee and old brick. But something in me had shifted. I wasn't searching anymore. I was hunting. Jake and I sat in the reading room of the historic New Orleans collection. Thick columns of morning light sliced through the dust-heavy air. The room was silent, save for the soft click of laptop keys and the occasional shuffle of archival folders. We had Lila's blessing and access to family documents that hadn't seen daylight in decades. I leaned over an old leather-bound album, the pages brittle and yellowed at the edges. Photos of my mother's paintings, carefully labeled in her handwriting, filled the pages, but none mentioned the blue heron. I frowned. There has to be a link somewhere. Jake didn't look up. "What if it's not in the art files?" He turned his laptop toward me. On the screen was a scanned PDF from an estate management folder, dated months before Mom passed. "Look at this." His finger tapped the corner. "Claire Harper's will. But here's the thing. This version was filed by Nathan, not your mom's lawyer." A chill crawled up my spine. "Wait, what?" He opened another tab. "Here's the copy from the firm your mom used. The signatures don't match." My blood turned to ice. The two versions were nearly identical, almost. But one named me sole caretaker of the collection. The other, it left the door open. It changed everything with just a few vague phrases. And that one bore Nathan's name in bold black ink. Jake zoomed in. "See this curve here? That's not your mom's hand. It's been forged." I pressed my fingers to my lips, shaking my head. "He faked it," I whispered. "He forged her will." Jake nodded solemnly, "and sold the paintings using this." I couldn't speak. The betrayal had gone deeper than theft. It was manipulation, fraud, a slow, careful erasure of my mother's wishes. I felt like the air had been knocked out of my lungs. "How did he think no one would find out?" I murmured. "He counted on no one looking," Jake said. "But you did." The world around me narrowed to the desk, the documents, and the burn in my chest. I stood abruptly, needing to move. I walked toward the tall windows and stared down at the street below. Tourists passed, laughing. A streetcar rattled down the tracks. The world was moving, indifferent to the war unraveling behind this glass. Jake joined me, quieter now. "We can take this to a handwriting analyst," he said. "Lila knows someone. If it's confirmed, it's not just a civil dispute, it's criminal." I nodded. barely. My hands clenched the windowsill. I wanted to scream. Instead, I said, "He's planning another sale." Jake blinked. "How do you know?" I met his eyes. "Because he got away with it once." We left the reading room in silence, carrying the weight of proof and rage. Back at my place, I paced the living room like a caged animal. Jake sat on the couch, typing furiously. He'd pulled up Nathan's old Gmail from years ago. My brother, the creature of habit, had reused passwords like they were spare socks. A low whistle escaped Jake's lips. "You were right." He turned the screen toward me. An email chain, dated this week. From Nathan to the auction house. Details of a private buyer viewing, scheduled for next week. 3 paintings were listed, one of which matched the dimensions and vague description of the blue heron. He was trying to sell it again, silently. Off the books. I stared at the screen. A new kind of anger rose inside me, not explosive, but clean, cold. He was so sure I wouldn't fight back. Jake read my face and leaned forward. "What do you want to do?" I took a long breath. "I want to stop him before it's too late." Jake nodded. "Then we'll need to move fast." We forwarded the emails, backed up the documents, contacted Lila, who promised to reach out to a legal contact. The walls were closing in on Nathan, and I was the one tightening them. Later that night, I stood alone in the attic. It smelled like varnish and memories. The moonlight bled through the skylight, casting long beams across the floorboards. I walked to the empty space on the wall, the one where the blue heron had hung. I placed my hand there, palm flat. "I'm coming for you," I whispered, "wherever you are." The air felt still but alive, like something waiting to return. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Lila. "Let's talk tomorrow. We have enough to make this public. He won't know what hit him." I read it twice. My jaw clenched. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about redemption and justice. I walked down the attic stairs slowly, feeling every creak, every memory buried in the wood. At the bottom I paused, because I knew. Nathan had made his final move. But now, it was my turn to strike back. Morning light pooled across the floor of Lila's gallery like a gentle tide. I stood beside the long wooden table in her back office, watching as Jake adjusted the lighting rig above. The high-res scans of the blue heron, captured from his old attic photos, were displayed on a tablet between us, magnified until you could see the grain of the canvas, the direction of every brushstroke. Lila was already on her laptop, fingers tapping swiftly as she connected to the video call. "Dr. Helen Carter," she said, glancing up at me. "Harvard-trained, Smithsonian certified. If anyone can verify this, it's her." I swallowed and nodded. This was it. Everything in me ached with anticipation, a knotted rope of hope and fear pulling tight inside my ribs. If the painting was authentic, it wouldn't just validate Mom's trust. It would crush Nathan's entire scheme. The screen flickered, then came to life. Dr. Carter appeared, late 50s, with silver curls swept into a bun and rectangular glasses perched low on her nose. Her background was a library of art tomes and old sketches pinned to the wall. "Good morning," she said, voice calm and clear. "Lila, always a pleasure. And you must be Emily." I nodded. My voice snagged in my throat. Jake rotated the tablet so she could see. As the image stabilized, silence fell. She leaned forward, adjusted her glasses, then again zoomed in. The seconds stretched. Finally, her lips parted, just slightly. "Well," she murmured, "this is extraordinary." My breath hitched. She tapped her pen against her notebook. "See this feathering at the crown? The depth of the neck's shading? And more importantly, the peculiar curvature of the branch under the left talon. That's a direct echo of Audubon's unfinished 1830 sketchbook study. Only a few historians have ever seen the original. But this," she pointed, "this was completed later. The composition is resolved. The scale, the layering. This isn't a copy. It's the real thing." I stared at the screen, unable to speak. Jake let out a soft, disbelieving whistle. Lila covered her mouth, eyes wide. Dr. Carter looked directly at me now. "Emily, your mother knew exactly what she had. And if this photograph is true to scale, we're not just talking high value. We're talking legacy-defining work. The current estimate? Easily $1.5 million, possibly more, depending on provenance. I felt the ground shift beneath me. All the heat flushed from my cheeks. Sorry, I breathed. I can't believe it. Dr. Carter smiled warmly. Believe it, but be careful. If someone attempted to sell this under false authority, they could face serious legal repercussions: fraud, forgery, possibly federal charges depending on interstate trade. I blinked. That someone is my brother. Silence. She nodded slowly. Then you'll want to move quickly and carefully. This level of discovery brings interest and attention. The call ended with a formal report request, but the moment lingered in the air like a dropped chandelier, shimmering, fragile, heavy with meaning. I stood at the window in Lila's office, gazing down at the street below. Cars passed in slow motion. A man walked his dog. A group of tourists laughed, pointing up at the balconies. Life moved on, oblivious. But inside me, something had locked into place. I pressed my hand to my chest. She was right. Mom knew. She left the truth like a breadcrumb trail, not just in the attic, but in every brushstroke, in every word of that letter. And Nathan, he tried to erase it. Lila walked over, placing a hand on my shoulder. She'd be proud of you, she said. I didn't respond. Couldn't. The feeling was too big for words. Later that afternoon, Jake and I sat at a small corner cafe, sipping lemon iced tea, poring over the expert's email. The official report had come in, confirming the painting's authenticity, potential value, and historical significance. Jake leaned back, tilting his chair. "This changes everything," he said. I nodded slowly. And then the fear crept in. If Nathan finds out we confirmed it... Jake gave me a look. He's already planning to sell it, but now we've got firepower. He was right. But knowing Nathan, he wouldn't back down. He'd double down. Lila had already started arranging a private legal consult and hinted at a larger plan, one that would expose everything, but I wasn't ready to think that far ahead yet. I looked down at the tablet again, at the soft arc of the bird's wings, frozen mid-flight in layered paint. I just wanted to protect her work, I whispered. I didn't think I'd be standing in the middle of a war. Jake watched me for a beat, then leaned forward. Then fight like someone who's got something worth saving. A breeze swept through the cafe, rustling napkins and stirring the hem of my dress. Somewhere down the street, a jazz trio struck up a slow tune, brass and bass weaving through the quarter like a pulse. I sat back, let it all sink in. We had the truth. We had the proof. And now, we had a decision to make. Because if Nathan was going to put this painting in front of a private buyer, he wouldn't expect me to beat him to it. He wouldn't see the exhibition coming. And he definitely wouldn't expect what we were planning next. The next morning, I stood in front of Lila's gallery, clutching my coffee like it was a lifeline. The humidity had already started to rise, curling my hair at the edges. New Orleans had that way of wrapping heat around your neck like a silk noose, gentle at first, but inescapable. Inside, the gallery was quiet, too quiet for the storm we were about to summon. Lila was already waiting near the back, rearranging framed prints like she needed something to do with her hands. Jake arrived moments later, his camera slung across his chest, his sleeves rolled up. The three of us stood around her desk, the expert's report spread out like a battle plan. "I've made my decision," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. "We're going public. We're going to expose him." Lila looked up, eyes sharp behind her glasses. "You're sure?" I nodded. "He's planning a private sale. We have the real evidence, the receipts, the email trail, the forged will. And now we have a masterpiece, one the world deserves to see." Jake leaned forward, tapping the desk. "So we make it impossible for him to hide. We take it out of the shadows." Lila's lips curled into a quiet, dangerous smile. "An exhibition." The word landed like thunder. "Right here in the gallery," she continued, "we reframe the narrative. We display the photo of the blue heron alongside the expert's verification. We show the proof, the contract he forged, the will, the receipts. We let the truth speak through the walls." I stepped closer. "Can we do that without risking the remaining pieces?" "We won't name the buyer," she said, "but we'll make sure the right people attend. Press, collectors, community leaders. If your brother shows up, Well, we'll be ready. A flicker of fear passed through me, but beneath it, resolve. This is war, isn't it? I whispered. Jake gave a dry chuckle. Only if we win. We set the date, Saturday evening, 4 days. Not much time, but just enough to make it count. Lila moved fast, calling in favors like a general assembling her army. She had a designer print new signage for the gallery windows. Uncovering the Hidden Legacy, a tribute to Claire Harper. Jake drafted an email pitch to local journalists. We don't make it about the scandal, he said, typing fast. We make it about the art, the story, the truth that someone tried to bury. And me? I rehearsed. In the quiet back office, under the dusty skylight, I stood alone in front of a mirror and read my speech aloud, over and over. My voice cracked. My hands trembled. I stumbled through the line. This is not just about paint and canvas. This is about a woman's vision, a family's story, a legacy stolen and reclaimed. The words felt too big in my mouth, too heavy. On the third day, I broke down. Lila found me curled on the storage room floor, knees to my chest, the speech crumpled in my hand. The smell of old wood and dried roses filled the small space. I can't do this, I said. What if no one believes me? What if he twists it again, turns it all around like he always does? She sat beside me, her movements quiet, grounding. Emily, she said gently, your mother chose you. You've carried her legacy through grief, betrayal, and fire. That's more than most people ever do. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be honest. I looked at her, tears slipping down my cheeks. What if I lose? You already lost him, she whispered. But you haven't lost yourself. That night, Jake stayed late to help me rework the visuals. We set up a projection for the photos, before and after, side-by-side comparisons of the attic wall, the missing paintings, the auction receipt. The forged signature highlighted in red, everything methodical, devastating. Friday evening arrived like the hush before an explosion. We stood beneath the gallery's dim chandelier, rehearsing lighting cues. The blue heron print, enlarged and mounted, stood at the center of the exhibit, illuminated from below like something sacred. I stared at it for a long time. The heron's wings were slightly parted, eyes sharp, mid-step, like it was walking out of the canvas. You waited, I thought. You stayed hidden until someone could protect you, just like Mom said. The moment felt heavy, reverent. Jake touched my shoulder lightly. You ready? I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. The following morning, the sun rose over the quarter with theatrical brilliance. Gold spilled over rooftops, lighting up shutters, balconies, beads caught in tree branches from a Mardi Gras long gone. I dressed slowly. Black pants, ivory blouse, a single silver locket. Mom's. Lila texted me as I locked my front door. It's time. Let's show them what truth looks like. The gallery door clicked shut behind me as I stepped into the space, now filled with light, stories, and secrets revealed. Tonight the world would see it all. And Nathan? He had no idea what was coming. By the time the gallery doors opened, the sky had settled into that dusky New Orleans lavender, the kind that looks painted, as if the city were trying to outdo the art on its own walls. The air inside was hushed, reverent. Lila's gallery had been transformed. Golden light from antique sconces lit the walls, casting warm halos over every framed piece. Small votive candles flickered on the reception table, their glow bouncing off champagne glasses. A soft jazz trio played near the back, their music melting into the hum of whispered conversation. And at the center, under a suspended beam of white light, hung the enlarged photo of the blue heron, elegant, poised, wild. Its feathers caught in mid-motion, eyes locked in eternal stillness. I stood by the front, my hands clenched just out of sight. Guests wandered in steadily, gallery regulars, a few reporters, and a scattering of local collectors whose names I recognized from my mother's old conversations. Some paused in front of the piece, mouths parted in quiet awe. Others squinted at the plaque, reading the words Jake and I had crafted so carefully. Claire Harper's lost legacy, reclaimed by her daughter. My chest tightened every time someone whispered, "Is this the Audubon? Or how did this go unseen?" But it wasn't until I saw him that my breath caught for real. Nathan. He walked in like he belonged there. Black shirt, expensive blazer, sunglasses pushed onto his head, his expression unreadable, calm, too calm. His eyes swept the gallery until they found me. He smiled. It wasn't warm. Jake stepped closer, quietly murmuring, "He's here." I nodded. My throat felt dry. The world narrowed. The jazz trio fell silent. Lila approached the podium. She cleared her throat gently and smiled at the crowd. "Thank you all for joining us this evening. Tonight is more than a gallery exhibition. It's a story, one of rediscovery, of family and of truth. We're proud to present a special unveiling, not just of art, but of a legacy nearly lost." She turned to me. "Emily?" My heels clicked against the tile as I stepped up. A hush fell. I could feel his gaze, Nathan's, burning into my back, but I didn't look at him. I looked at the audience, and then at her, my mother's work. "My name is Emily Harper," I began, voice low but steady. "Some of you may know my mother, Claire. She was a teacher, an artist, and a woman who believed that art outlives us all." I paused, swallowed. She left behind something extraordinary, and someone tried to erase it. A ripple moved through the crowd. Jake dimmed the lights slightly. Behind me, the projection screen lit up. First slide, the attic wall, before and after. Second, the receipt from Crescent House Auctions. Third, the forged contract. Nathan's signature next to my mother's copied name. Gasps. A few people turned. I kept going. Claire Harper left her work to me, not for profit, but for preservation. Her collection included a piece thought lost. The Blue Heron. Expert analysis confirmed its authenticity just days ago. It's worth over $1.5 million. Murmurs turned into astonished chatter. Nathan suddenly stepped forward. "This is ridiculous," he said, voice louder than necessary. "That painting was in my possession." He looked straight at the crowd. "She's twisting this. Our mother never made it clear. She—" "Don't," I said softly, turning to face him. The silence that followed was thunderous. I walked toward him, slow, deliberate. "She made it clear to me. You broke into the attic. You sold her paintings. You forged a document with her name on it." He flinched, barely, but enough. A reporter raised her phone and started filming. Jake stepped into the frame and changed the slide one last time. A side-by-side of the two wills, one authentic, the other altered. I pointed to the discrepancy. "This one is notarized by her lawyer. This one submitted by Nathan Harper. Notice the signature." A collector in the crowd shook his head. "Unbelievable!" Nathan tried to speak again, but his voice cracked. I had a right?" "No," I said, cutting him off. "You had a choice." The tension snapped in the room like a cable under strain. He backed away, and I turned back to the audience. "Some things," I said, softer now, "are bigger than family, bigger than betrayal. This painting wasn't just hidden, it was silenced, and tonight it speaks again." A beat of silence, then applause. It started slowly, then grew, like a rising tide. A man stepped forward, shaking my hand. "I'd like to speak about acquiring the full collection, legally and publicly," he added, loud enough for Nathan to hear. Lila stood beside me, beaming. Jake gave a low whistle. "Nathan?" He slipped out the side door, eyes low, jacket hanging loose at his sides. But I didn't chase him. I stood beneath the chandelier, tears threatening but not yet falling, staring at my mother's heron, poised in eternal motion, unbroken. I felt a hand slip into mine. "Lila." She squeezed gently. "You did it," she whispered. And I believed her, but in the pit of my stomach, I knew it wasn't over. Nathan wouldn't walk away without trying one last time, and the next time, he'd be desperate. I should have felt victorious. The exhibition had gone better than I imagined. Truth, applause, a potential buyer, and Nathan walking out with nothing but shame. But the celebration was brief. That night, as I stood by my window in the quiet hush of early midnight, I watched the rain streak down the glass like falling ink. Streetlights reflected off the slick pavement. In the distance, a siren wailed once and then disappeared. I still hadn't changed out of my clothes from the exhibition. My blouse clung to my skin, and my hand trembled slightly around the glass of wine I'd barely touched. I kept replaying the way Nathan looked at me before he left. Not angry, not broken, desperate. That's what scared me. When my phone buzzed on the table, the screen lit up his name. My breath caught in my throat. I let it ring once, twice. Then I answered. Emily. His voice was raw, worn down. Not the cold, sharp tone I'd come to expect, but lower, tired, like he hadn't slept. I'm not calling to fight, he said. I want to talk. I didn't say anything. I know I messed up, he continued. I shouldn't have sold them. I shouldn't have done what I did with the documents, but it's done. And now the world's on your side. You win. My fingers tightened around the glass. Then what do you want, Nathan? A pause. A split, he said softly. 50-50, on the Audubon, on anything else that comes from it. I'll walk away, quietly, just don't press charges. I laughed once, short, bitter. You forged Mom's will. I know, he said, almost pleading. But Emily, if this goes to court, my job, my house, everything's gone. Please. He was unraveling. But the worst part? A small, battered piece of me still hurt to hear him like that. Still remembered birthdays and water balloon fights and Christmas mornings when he snuck extra marshmallows into my cocoa. You threatened me, I whispered. Do you remember that? He didn't reply. The silence stretched between us like a fault line. I'm not backing down, I said. Not now. Not ever. He hung up. I sat there for a long time in the quiet, staring at the dark screen. I wanted to cry, not out of sadness, but out of the weight of it all. How family could become your undoing. How love could turn into a threat, and a brother could turn into a stranger. The next morning I found out he wasn't done. Lila called me just after 10 a.m., her voice tight with concern. His lawyer contacted the gallery. They're contesting your ownership of the collection. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the floor. They can't do that. They're trying, she said, claiming Claire was mentally unfit when she wrote the will, that you manipulated her. My pulse spiked. What? It's a weak case, Lila said, but they're hoping to scare you, push you to settle before charges can be pressed against him. I stood slowly, voice cold. I'm not settling. Good, she said, because we're not letting him rewrite the truth. Jake came over later with coffee and a folder of screenshots. Security cam from the gallery, he said. I upgraded the motion sensors last week. He opened the file. It was grainy, but clear enough. Nathan, dressed in black, entering the gallery through a side door around 2 a.m. He moved quickly. Then he stopped in front of a minor piece, one of Mom's smaller abstracts. Not valuable in the market, but sentimental. One of the first pieces she painted after her diagnosis. We watched in horrified silence as he pulled out something from his coat, a box cutter. He slashed it, twice, then fled. My hand covered my mouth. My heart pounded like a war drum. That's enough, Jake said. We're going to the police. The station felt cold, sterile. I gave my statement with numb clarity. The officer typed each word carefully, glancing up only once when I said, forged the will. Jake turned over the footage, the email trail, the documents, everything we had. They took it seriously. An officer nodded slowly. We'll bring him in. Later that evening, we stood across the street from Nathan's place, a renovated townhouse he'd once boasted about over dinner. Police lights flickered like ghosts against the shutters. He stood in the doorway, arms stiff, lips tight, hands cuffed behind him. He didn't fight, didn't yell. He just looked at me, not with hatred, but something worse, a hollow kind of loss, like a man who finally realized what he'd broken. As they guided him into the cruiser, I felt my knees buckle slightly. Jake steadied me. It's over, he said softly, but I shook my head. Because it wasn't, not really. You don't walk away from this kind of betrayal untouched. The art was saved. The law was finally listening. But the scar, it was still fresh. And I knew, deep in my gut, the headlines would come, the judgment, the questions, and I'd have to be ready. The morning after Nathan's arrest, the city was already awake. Horns echoed down Decatur Street, and the scent of beignets and boiling chicory danced on the air. I stood barefoot in the kitchen, watching the coffee drip slowly into the pot. My phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. I hesitated, then picked up. Ms. Harper? Yes. This is Officer Landry from NOPD, just confirming that Nathan Harper was taken into custody last night. Charges filed include will forgery, art fraud, and destruction of property. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Thank you. He won't be able to make further claims against the collection, and with the documentation you've provided, the court will likely return all rights to you within the week. When I hung up, I just stood there. The weight I'd carried for months, maybe years, had finally shifted. It wasn't gone, but it was no longer mine to bear alone. The coffee had turned lukewarm. Still, I poured a cup and walked to the front window. The light outside was soft, peach-colored, sliding over the iron balcony rail like silk. Below, the streetcars rattled forward, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was chasing something. I was here, standing still, safe. The day unfolded in unexpected ways. By noon, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Lila. "You need to see the news," she said, voice buzzing with something between disbelief and joy. I opened the link she sent. A local news outlet. Big, bold headline. New Orleans art savior. Woman uncovers 1.5 mil lost masterpiece, exposes family fraud. My face was right there. A photo from the exhibition. Me standing beside the blue heron print, hand, mid-gesture, eyes wide. They'd caught me in the moment of unveiling. I looked alive. The article was kind, gracious, respectful. It told the story. My mother's legacy, the discovery, the forged will. It didn't paint Nathan as a villain, but it didn't hide the truth either. By 2 p.m., my inbox was overflowing. Collectors, curators, even a museum in Baton Rouge requesting to collaborate on a full exhibition of Claire Harper's work. I sat at my desk in the living room, staring at the flood of subject lines, and for the first time, I smiled. Really smiled. The kind that pulled at the corners of my eyes, the kind that Mom used to catch when I finished a painting and knew deep down it was good. The doorbell rang. Jake stood on the other side, holding a bouquet of wildflowers and 2 cold lemon sodas. "You're famous," he grinned. I laughed and stepped aside to let him in. The house felt different now, not just because Nathan was gone, but because the ghosts had been named. We sat in the sunroom, the glass doors open to let in the warm air, cicadas singing in the distance. Jake leaned back, sipping his drink. "I hope you realize," he said, "you did the impossible." I looked down at the newspaper folded in my lap, my name in bold. "I don't know if it was impossible," I said softly. "Just overdue." We spent the afternoon responding to messages, sorting through gallery inquiries, and reviewing security plans for the remaining art. But beneath the work was something deeper, a sense of grounding, of arrival. Later, I stood in the gallery again, just me and the paintings. Lila had left the lights on low. The walls glowed with soft amber light. I walked past each frame slowly, my hand trailing just above the glass. Here was Summer's Grief, the abstract Mom painted after Dad left. Here was Midnight Bayou, full of purples and inky blues and brushstrokes that looked like water dripping through a dream. And at the center, the blue heron. I stopped in front of it. No longer a rumor, no longer buried, just truth. I touched the edge of the frame gently. "Mom," I whispered, "we did it." I didn't expect anything in return. But still, a breeze moved through the room, rattling the hanging bulbs slightly, sending a soft creak through the ceiling beams, like a response, or maybe just a nod. That night, I lit a candle on the front porch and sat with it long after the sun had gone. Jazz spilled from a nearby bar, and neighbors passed by and waved, as if I'd always belonged here, as if I hadn't once been the girl hiding in an attic full of silence. My phone buzzed again, a text from an unknown number. "You may have won this round, but it's not over." No name, but I knew the voice, Nathan. Even behind bars, he hadn't let go. I stared at the message, the glow of the screen dancing in the candlelight. Then I blew the candle out and stood. He may have still been trying, but I was no longer afraid. Still, I had to be ready. Because men like Nathan, they don't disappear quietly. A week after the exhibition, I sat in a folding chair inside a small community center on Burgundy Street, surrounded by 12 strangers and the scent of freshly brewed peppermint tea. The circle was quiet. There were no cameras here, no reporters, no gallery lights, just people. Each of us held something invisible: grief, guilt, anger, things too heavy for polite conversation, but in this circle, the weight was allowed. "My name is Emily," I said, my voice soft, steady. "Hi, Emily," the group echoed. I exhaled slowly. "I lost my brother," I said, not to death, but to something that felt just as permanent. The room stayed still. Someone's bracelets clinked as they shifted in their chair. I looked down at my hands in my lap, fingers interlocked so tightly they were almost white. He forged our mother's will. He stole her art, her legacy, and he tried to make me doubt what I knew to be true. I paused. My mother was a painter, a brilliant one, and she left her work in my hands before she passed. A lump began to rise in my throat, but I kept going. I was so focused on protecting it that I didn't realize how deeply I'd been wounded by the betrayal. I didn't realize how much I needed to grieve the relationship I thought I had with my brother. A woman across from me, maybe 60, with silver braids and gentle eyes, nodded. Her gaze said, "You're not alone." And for the first time, I believed that. After the group ended, I walked slowly down the sunlit hallway of the center. A mural of magnolias bloomed along one wall, flanked by quotes about healing and time. My steps echoed, each one softer than the last. When I stepped outside, the air was warm and a little sweet, like honeysuckle after rain. And waiting in my mailbox at home was a letter. No return address. I knew the handwriting before I even touched it. Nathan. My fingers hovered above the envelope for a long time. My mind screamed to throw it away, burn it, shred it, but I needed to know, so I opened it. His handwriting was slanted and inconsistent, like someone writing from the inside of a storm. "Emily, I know you won't believe anything I say. I wouldn't either if I were you. But I'm writing because I need you to understand that none of this was supposed to happen the way it did. I felt invisible growing up. You were always the one Mom adored, and I resented it. That's no excuse, but it's the truth. When she died, I felt like the world split in half, and you got the part with the sun. I didn't want the art. Not really. I just didn't want to feel like I had nothing left. I'm sorry. I really am. But I don't expect you to forgive me. Maybe I'm writing this more for myself than for you. Nathan." I reread it twice. And then I folded it back up, gently, carefully. Not because I forgave him, but because something in me needed to finally put the past down. That evening I walked into the living room with a small hammer, a nail, and one painting wrapped in linen. It wasn't the Blue Heron. That one now belonged to a private museum in New York, thanks to the clean legal transfer organized by Lila and the attorneys. But this one was more personal. It was my mother's favorite. April window, a quiet painting of an open pane, sheer curtains blowing inward, a single orange lily on the sill. I used to fall asleep to it as a child. I found the perfect spot on the wall just above the mantel and hung it there slowly, breath held as I let the frame settle. The last nail into the wall felt like something sacred. I stepped back, arms crossed loosely, and just stared. The silence of the room wrapped around me like a soft blanket. Then from outside, the sound of a trumpet drifted up through the windows, someone practicing, notes slow and wandering. I closed my eyes. It didn't bring back my brother. It didn't erase the trial, the headlines, the sting, but it was peace, real, earned. The next morning, I met Lila and Jake for coffee at a little cafe on Frenchman Street. We sat outside, the wrought iron table wobbling slightly, mugs steaming in the cool air. Jake raised his cup. "To closure." Lila raised hers too. "And beginnings." I smiled but didn't raise mine. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out a small card. It was an invitation. Heavy stock, cream, with embossed lettering. Claire Harper Memorial Lecture and Exhibit, hosted by the Louisiana Museum of Modern Art. Jake's eyebrows lifted. "Is this?" I nodded. "They're opening a wing, for her. A real one." Lila covered her mouth with both hands. "Oh, Emily." I looked down at the card again. "She always said art should teach us something," I whispered. "Now it will." We spent the morning planning, laughing, remembering Mom, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was clinging to the edge of something fragile. I felt planted. But that afternoon, as I sat alone by the gallery window, sorting through old inventory notes, my phone buzzed. It was the museum. The woman on the other end sounded uneasy. "There's been a development," she said. "A document submitted by someone claiming to be Nathan Harper's legal proxy. They're suggesting ownership of another Harper painting we were planning to include." My stomach dropped. I gripped the phone tighter. "What painting?" There was a pause. "We're verifying, but it's titled Southern Lament. It wasn't included in the original registry." I sat up straight. Southern Lament wasn't in Mom's records, but I remembered it. She painted it the year Dad left. It hung in her closet for years, too painful to display. And if Nathan was trying to use it... My pulse quickened. "I'll be there in the morning," I said. "We're not done yet." Because even in the aftermath of truth, sometimes the past has one more shadow to cast. The museum smelled like fresh plaster, varnish, and possibility. I stood near the main entrance, clutching my mother's scarf between my fingers. It was the same one she used to wear on chilly spring mornings when she'd walk to the corner bakery with a thermos full of paintbrushes tucked under her arm. Now it lived in my coat pocket like a talisman. All around me, volunteers and curators buzzed with the quiet energy of preparation. Soft jazz hummed through the overhead speakers. Spotlights glowed gently against newly installed canvases. On the eastern wall, a large brass plaque read, "Claire Harper Wing, a celebration of truth, color, and the courage to preserve." I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the warmth of the space settle into me. We'd done it. 2 months had passed since Nathan's final attempt to claw back a piece of the legacy. The museum's legal team had dismantled his claims within days. The moment we proved Southern Lament was unsigned and gifted to me verbally on record during one of Mom's final audio journals, the fight ended. This time, completely. Nathan didn't appeal, and I didn't look back. Instead, I looked forward, to this day, opening day. Dozens of people had RSVP'd, art lovers, friends, collectors, students, and people who'd never known Claire Harper, but felt something the moment they saw her brushstrokes. Beside the reception desk, we'd set up a tribute wall. Black and white photos of Mom in her studio, clips of her teaching at the community college, and snippets of her voice from old recordings. "I don't paint what I see," one of the quotes read, looping on the screen. "I paint what I remember feeling, even if it hurts." I could still hear her saying it. At 10:03 a.m., the first guests arrived. A pair of teenagers from a local high school wandered in, quiet and wide-eyed. One of them stopped in front of the porch light years, staring at it like it might speak. More followed. A young mother holding her daughter's hand. An older couple in matching coats. A bus of kids from a nearby art program that Lila and I had helped sponsor. By 11 o'clock, the room was full. And by 11:30, I was standing in front of the mic, my hands resting on the edge of the podium, my heart thudding in rhythm with the applause. "Thank you for being here," I said, "for showing up not just for the art, but for the woman behind it." I let my eyes drift across the crowd, so many unfamiliar faces, yet somehow each one tethered to this moment. "When my mother passed away," I continued, "she left me more than paintings. She left me a promise, to protect what matters, to speak the truth, even when it costs you, and to believe in the power of creation over destruction." A silence settled. I glanced at the heron sketch framed behind me, the original, not the photo, now safely returned to public display through a long-term loan agreement. "This collection was nearly lost," I said, "not to time, but to greed, secrecy, and fear. And yet, here it is, not because I was strong, but because I was surrounded by people who believed the truth deserved light." I stepped back. Lila took the mic briefly to introduce the Youth Art Initiative, free weekend workshops in Claire Harper's name, led by working artists. The first session would start that afternoon. The doors to the smaller gallery opened. Inside, easels, jars of clean brushes, canvases stacked neatly in the corner, and a table piled with snacks and sketchbooks. 12 kids poured in, laughter chasing them. They scattered, taking in the supplies like treasure hunters. One of them, a girl with short curls and paint already on her elbows, looked up at me and asked, "Are we allowed to paint anything?" I smiled. Absolutely, that's the whole point. I stayed in the doorway for a long time, just watching. There was something so deeply healing in that room, in the noise, the mess, the colors just beginning to bloom on blank surfaces. I thought of Mom, how she used to hum when she painted, how her joy was messy and loud and honest. And now, here it was again, reborn. Later that afternoon, I stood by the tall gallery windows as the sky softened toward gold. I held a cup of mint tea in both hands, the warmth curling into my palms. Behind me, someone cleared their throat. Jake. He stepped beside me, silent at first, then offered a quiet smile. "Your mother would have loved this," I nodded. "I know." We stood there for a while, saying nothing, letting the light do the talking. Eventually I turned to face the room again. The final gallery wall held just one painting, Inheritance. It was new, mine, my first original piece in over 4 years. Thick strokes, pale colors over a rusted red underlayer. A silhouette of a woman walking into morning light. No face, no background, just motion, just intent. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. I didn't hang it to say, "Look at me." I hung it to say, "I'm still here." And that's the thing I'd finally learned. Legacy isn't about value. It's not about who profits, or who gets the credit, or who writes the last line. It's about who keeps showing up, who keeps telling the story, even when it hurts, even when it costs you. Because what we leave behind isn't just what we've made, it's who we've become. So if you're listening to this, wondering whether your voice matters, whether it's worth fighting to protect the things you love, the things that carry your name or your family's truth, I want you to know, it does. It always will. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find the strength to turn your silence into color again. Have you ever protected your family's legacy? If you have, or if you're trying to, tell me your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And if this story meant something to you, like it did to me, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to believe that healing is possible. Because at the end of the day, what legacy will you leave behind?